So we have the official confirmed title for the Nico D'Angelo, or the Solangelo book from Mark Oshiro and Reed Riordan, who accidentally leaked it, which I covered here on the channel earlier last week. And it's The Son and the Star. It's a Nico D'Angelo book. And today we're going to be diving into what that may mean. Now, I'm very excited. So this is a Nico D'Angelo standalone story. It is called The Son and the Star. It is labelled as a Nico D'Angelo story. I keep saying his last name really, I'm just like adding the letters together. D'Angelo, not Delangelo. Oh my gosh. And we don't really have that much to go on as to what this story is going to be about, beyond the fact that it's going to be related to Tartarus. Now, we got some hints at the end of The Tower of Nero, the last Trials of Apollo book, that it was going to be related to Tartarus. And obviously this book is being co-written by Mark Oshiro and Rick Riordan, with seemingly Mark Oshiro kind of taking the forefront of the writing and the project work for this story, due to the fact that Mark is queer and uses they, he pronouns. So be aware of that when you're talking about them in the comments below, by the way, they use they, he. But yes, all we already know is that it's Will and Nico together, seemingly going to Tartarus. There's going to be drama, there's going to be emotion, and I am not ready. But I have some ideas as to what the story could be. Now, there's been a lot of theorising about the idea that this story may be following the Orpheus and Eurydice, I'm probably saying that wrong, story, which is about Orpheus and Eurydice. Orpheus, who falls in love with her, Eurydice falls in love with him, she dies, Orpheus is then given the chance to go to the underworld and get her, and he's basically tasked with the fact that he can only help Eurydice escape the underworld if he doesn't turn back. He has to believe that she is following him, and unfortunately he does look back, which means that Eurydice can never be broken out of the underworld again, because Orpheus didn't trust her enough. It's a very sad, very depressing story, and there's some theories that this may be what happens with Nico and Will, which, Tartarus related, I can kind of see it. The sad element, probably not so much. So we have had a sort of half confirmation that, well, I guess it's more in the sense of a half thought, preconceived idea that with Mark being a queer author, and also the fact that the bury your gays trope is way too large still even now, that Nico and Will probably aren't going to die. There's going to be none of that. Again, probably not a guarantee, but I can't see them doing that for a standalone novel with the only two main queer characters in the Percy Jackson series. So I feel we are safe from their possible deaths. So, you know, assuage your fears for now, hopefully. But the Tartarus element is the thing that I'm most intrigued about, because with the title The Son and the Star, the son being Will, and we also found out from Will in, I think specifically the Tower of Nero, that Will is a glow stick. Like, this boy literally glows. The only thing I can think of what is similar to that is Zack from Sky High, whose ability is to glow in the dark, basically. And that's Will. Although thankfully Will's isn't just in the dark, he can just naturally glow, which I think is quite funny. So we've got the sun, who may be guiding them into Tartarus and being a guiding light. Ooh. And the star. Who said hello to the stars? That's correct, that would be Bob. And Bob the cat are of course still in Tartarus. We don't know if they actually died. There is the assumption, but also they are in Tartarus, and they are, in the case of Bob, a Titan. So it is possible that he could be reborn. Whether or not he is reborn in the form that we know him as Bob the good Titan and Bob the janitor, is to be, you know, determined. But that could be something that could be explored in the Tartarus story, of them going to find something in Tartarus to make sure everything is going well and things are staying correct in that way. Or maybe even for like a mental health journey, because obviously Nico has a lot of PTSD related to all the stuff he went through, of going through Tartarus alone, of nearly dying, having to rely on what are they called? The little seeds that Persephone eats. Pomegranate seeds, so he doesn't die while starving of oxygen in a jar. Like, this boy has been through a lot, and obviously the whole losing his sister and all these other different difficult things that he's been through. But Tartarus seems to be the one that, in my opinion, is probably the worst thing he went through, of experiencing this horrific, literal hell, really, by himself as a 14, 15-year-old. I think it was more 14. So for him to go through that with someone who he trusts, someone who he cares about, who is a guiding light, to also do a check to make sure that things are going correctly in Tartarus, as well as deal with his trauma, I think it would be a really interesting storyline. And that's how they could maybe bump into Bob, because remember, Nico was good friends with Bob. He cared about Bob. He looked after him in the underworld. It sounds so funny that I keep saying the name Bob. He looked after him in the underworld and, you know, helped him get the job in the underworld as the janitor, and helped make sure he was respected and looked after. And I don't know, I just like the idea of Nico seeing Bob again and maybe helping him and Bob the cat get out of Tartarus and back into the real world. Or maybe if Bob has, returned to his darker form, so to speak, helping him find who he really is again. Of this, the nicer version of him, because obviously his original version is a terrible titan. But it's helping him find the stars, bringing him into the light again with Will, the literal light, to see the stars. I don't know, I like the idea of this story about being Nico dealing with his trauma and, you know, recognising that he's experienced a lot of things, but with someone who is there to support him through it, as well as rescuing someone who hasn't been rescued, in the case of Bob. And maybe the giant whose name I've forgotten, begins with a D. Someone in the comments will probably remember, so comment below. But sort of righting some wrongs with that. Like, these two, Bob and the giant, helped Annabeth and Percy, you know, close the doors of death and, you know, let them go free again to help, you know, save the day in some ways. And they are still stuck there. They're still stuck in a terrible world that hates them. So maybe Nico and Will be there to undo that. I don't know, but it's going to be interesting. The thing that I find the most interesting, though, which a lot of people seem to have been somewhat surprised by, I'm somewhat, not necessarily disappointed, but I've liked it. But this book clearly seems to be just solely from Nico's point of view, because it is labelled as a Nico D'Angelo adventure story. So from how that's given, like with Percy Jackson, it seems to be that this standalone novel is just going to be from Nico's point of view. We're not going to have Will's point of view. I am slightly surprised, but also not, because it is Nico's story, so it kind of makes sense. And I kind of like the idea of it focusing on him a little bit more. And, you know, like I was saying, him going through this journey of dealing with his trauma. But I would have liked Will's point of view. Maybe we will get it, maybe in like an epilogue for the novel or something like that. But it seems that we can assume that this is just going to be solely from Nico's point of view, due to the sort of secondary tag of the title, which is a Nico D'Angelo story. But I don't hate it. I don't, again, like I said, I would have liked Will's point of view, but it makes a lot more sense for it to just be Nico's point of view, because of everything that Nico went through. So I'm excited. I'm intrigued as to how this story is actually going to be for Tartarus and for Nico. And I seriously can't wait to see the cover. I can't wait to find out all the more about it. And I can't wait to read it. So what do you guys want to see in this story? What are you looking forward to specifically in relation to Nico's journey and his journey with Will? Comment below and let me know your thoughts. I would love to hear them. And remember, if you like books, be sure to get your copy of my debut novel, Home to the Wild, out now on all platforms. So if you like found families and wolves, this is the story for you. It's going to be linked down below alongside the links to my Patreon, the subscribe button which you should be hitting, and dropping a thumbs up and comments and all that sort of good stuff, and sharing with your friends. I seriously can't wait for this book, so it's going to be a lot of fun. As always, thank you all so much for tuning in, and I'll see you all next time.